Hello and welcome. My name's David and we're talking the latest SailGP event, Halifax, Canada. We've talked from the beginning of the season to split the fleet, and with the whole fleet at Halifax. Finally, the decision was made to have more races and less congestion. There were 13 F50s at the event, after having 12 boats at the 4 previous events, so this time they split the fleet. The weather forecast for Saturday was to be a very windy day. Sunday meant to decrease throughout the afternoon. They split the fleet into Group A 7 boats, Group B 6 boats. Points would be dished out to the first 5 positions. As Saturday's forecast was for wind, the boats were rigged with a 25-metre wing and the small configuration on the foils. Unfortunately, Saturday's wind strength was only half that predicted, which made it difficult for the teams to get round the course in the allotted race time. However, they did manage 4 not particularly exciting races on Saturday. Sunday, however, was a different story. SailGP had moved the start time from 4 PM to 2 PM because of the weather forecast. And whether it was this change or the weather was absolutely beautiful. There were 4 great races and a 4-boat final. It was superb. Following the incident in New York, SailGP emphasised an existing guideline to have a crew member keeping watch to prevent collisions. The teams would now have to have a lookout the opposite side to the helmsman. If you had watched my last video, you would have heard my opinion on a rule change, and that wasn't it. But it does change the way the crew race. For good or bad, we'll yet to see. Brazil have made a crew change. Paul Goodison would now be on the helm and Martin Gall would be the strategist. If this decision was made because of the crash, Paul Goodison had full view of how that incident unfolded, so a swap wouldn't make any difference. But if it's based on race results, then by all means change. Unfortunately, this change didn't make any difference to their end results for Brazil. Group A, Race 1, 4 crew. All the boats were a bit early to the start, so they kind of have to lose time. Putting the nose into wind takes the power out the sails, but you lose speed. So it's a bit of a delicate balance to ensure that you're ready to power up the sails for the start. Some managed this better than others. Australia and New Zealand had a better start, with Los Cayos in third. In these light winds, patience was needed, and everything was done as if it was in slow motion. Denmark were behind. After a little time on the foils, they caught up with the fleet. Unfortunately, they lost the wind, and they were in 7th, which is where they finished. Bond's Flying Rouge turned towards the shore, with Los Cayos and Brazil following closely. Black Foils and the DS Automobiles France went the opposite way at Gate 2. Approaching the finish line, Bond's Flying Rouge were first. Los Cayos had foiled and were fast and took second in front of New Zealand. Brazil had also gained a lot of ground, and they nipped in front of France for that 4th. Group B, first race. All the boats were on the water. With a bit of rain and a bit more wind, the teams had 5 crew, which was good for those conditions. All the boats were late for the start. US were first to the Mark 1 and had a bit of a lead. The last 2 places were taken with Artemis and Red Bull Italy. The Swiss on leg 3 were foiling and caught up with the fleet. At gate 3 they were able to keep the boat foiling and started to take the lead. US made a turn at gate 3 towards shore but lost some speed. Emirates took advantage of this and were in third. Artemis at gate 3 had split away from the lead boats. Emirates GBR and US were very slow in the middle of the course. The Swiss won with a big margin with Artemis second. Group A, race 2. Brazil were first off the line, but Denmark were on the outside and could keep better speed as they rounded Mark 1 and led to gate 2. The conditions were light and shifty, and at the end of the day it was where you was on the course to take the advantage of those shifts. Los Gaius were in first place, with France in second and now Denmark in fourth. The wind got lighter as they headed to the finish line. Australia and New Zealand had a better line and were fighting for positions, and it was really tight, with Australia just beating New Zealand for that win. Group B, race 2. Artemis and Emirates GBR had a great start. Artemis had a better line and were in the lead at the first mark. As the wind dropped, they headed towards the shoreline where it appeared there was more wind. Artemis remained in front and in control of the race, while Emirates GBR followed and were in second. At gate 3, Emirates GBR decided to do the opposite to Artemis and headed along the shoreline, while Artemis just kept it smooth. GBR had a slow turn and they had to wait for the boat to gain speed, and when it did they were foiling. Artemis were slow, but they did have the shorter distance to travel. Emirates GBR had to go wide to keep the boat foiling and fast. Artemis was hoping that the wind would hold while they headed to the finish line. In the end, Artemis was just fast enough and won by a second over Emirates GBR. Here are the results of Group A, Day 1 and Group B. Sunday, with the weather predicted to have strong winds which would die off in the afternoon, the organisers brought the start forward. The F-50s were rigged with the 25-metre wing and the smaller foils, specifically for those weather conditions. However, this setup didn't seem to work for Emirates GBR, who were preparing for the race when they nosedived. In a video that I've seen, the starboard rudder seemed to lose strength, twist and bend in an uncharacteristic manner, and the boat jibed whilst it nosedived. With such a violent emergency stop, everything was thrown forward. The wing flexed and tore, and that was the end of the event for GBR. Due to this incident, the teams were instructed not to exceed 75 kilometres an hour. How they would manage this, I don't know. Group A, first race. Los Gaius had a brilliant start. How they found a gap at the start line. It was now biting stuff. Los Gaius hit more than 80 kilometres an hour at gate 2, so it seemed that the speed limit guideline couldn't be adhered to. Although New Zealand and Brazil were slow at the gate following Los Gaius. Canada took advantage of this and took second place. New Zealand gained speed, but Brazil couldn't, forcing France to duck behind them as they came down the course at 48 kilometres an hour at the mast. Brazil clearly had the problem as the support boat towed them off the course. At gate 5, Los Gaius headed towards the finish line and won the race. North Star Canada had Australia and New Zealand in close proximity, but they held their nerve and finished in second. And you could hear the home fans cheering them on. First race, Group B, and Artemis had a great start, with the US in second place. Artemis passed the speed limit as they bared away, but their boat was lower in the water than GBR, and the rudders held firm. As they approached Gate 2, the Swiss were really fast and had the right of way, but Germany couldn't move out the way, so the Swiss had to change course. Red Bull Italy then got a penalty, and the reason why Germany didn't give way became apparent as the Italians' penalty did not give room at the obstruction to Germany. But unfortunately this didn't help the Swiss. Artemis positioned their boat and had the advantage over the US, and at Gate 3 they went on to win. The Swiss were aggressive at Gate 5 as they tried to overtake Germany, but on the last leg it was neck and neck between the two boats as they rounded the mark, but Germany kept their place and crossed the finish line in third. Race 2, Group A. Canada had an early start penalty. Los Gaias had a bad start, giving New Zealand the chance to be in that final. New Zealand needed to finish in front of Los Gaias by 2 places. At Gate 3, New Zealand outfoxed Los Gaias as Denmark slotted in between. At Gate 4, New Zealand couldn't control Denmark as they split away. Heading to the finish line, New Zealand tried to slow Los Gaias down so that Denmark could take fourth. Amazing how New Zealand tried to set this up. Los Gaias turned towards the line, then New Zealand, and Denmark was on course to the finish line. All 3 boats crossed the line, and it was so close. Los Gaias beat Denmark by half a metre. While this was going on, Canada had taken second place. Race 2, Group B. Whatever the Brazilian problem was, unfortunately it meant Brazil didn't compete, and this was the last race to qualify for the 4-boat final. This race was all about qualifying for the final, and this was between Switzerland and Germany. The Swiss made a great start and rolled over the top of the US at the first mark and led the race. The Swiss were doing well, but made a mistake at Gate 3, and now the US were hot on their tail. Germany approached Gate 3, and they did have an opportunity to get in front of the Swiss and the US, but that meant 3 boats using the same wind. Germany didn't fancy their chances and followed. The US pulled away a bit and won the race, with the Swiss in second place. Full race results for Day 2, Group A and Group B. This was the first 4-boat final, and competing was Artemis, Switzerland, Australia and Spain. There was a bit of pressure on Artemis and the Swiss, as they hadn't competed in a final and won. All had a good start, and Spain were in the lead at Mark 1, and Swiss just behind. Australia and Artemis decided to split the course. At Gate 2, they were all on a line as they headed towards the shoreline, and the first boat to tack away was Artemis, then Australia, Spain, last was Swiss. Each boat was that little bit further up the course, and at Gate 3, but the Swiss had lost a lot of ground, and Spain was under pressure from Artemis, and unusually the Australians were slow. At Gate 4, Spain were first and Artemis second. Nathan Outteridge decided to spin the boat and head towards the shoreline for more wind. Heading up the course, Artemis was closer, and as they crossed the course, Spain was in front at the cross. It was close at Gate 5, and as they headed back down the course, Spain had to make 2 manoeuvres to the finish line, and Artemis only 1. Spain, on the downward leg, didn't lose out, and as they turned in front of the faster Swedish boat, at the last mark, Artemis tried the outside, but both team was wise to this and gave enough disturbed wind to slow Sweden down. Spain headed to the finish line and took the victory. So in summary, the next event is in Portsmouth, UK. Down the road in Southampton is where SailGP Technologies is based. So there will be a full diagnostic on the Emirates GBR rudder. They'll investigate the unusual way that the rudder acted in Emirates GBR's nosedive. The teams will be waiting for that report to ensure that their rudders do not behave in the same way in the future. Also, the emphasis on this guideline that a crew member should be on lookout duty. You could see the crew members perched in the middle of the boat looking out across the course. A perfect example of this was Los Gallos' perfect start in race 1 and day 2. The grinder was pointing out to boat team where the boats were, and the strategist Nicole was in the centre of the boat giving the all clear. Boat team's Vamos clearly showed that the move was on because of the lookouts. So hopefully this guideline will remain in all future races. With split fleet racing seeming to be a big hit, will SailGP do the same again? Probably. Also, is this format better for the spectators? They get to see more of the boats and they can show off what they do best, going fast. Great to see you. Hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to subscribe and click the thumbs up, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye for now.